So a friend of mine did a food tour in Savannah, Georgia. I had never heard of a food tour before, and when she came back home and was telling us about her experience of going to different restaurants, and she did a tour of the city of Savannah, and they went to different landmarks in the city, and the tour guide was talking about the landmarks. That was all really really interesting to me. I've been a history buff ever since I was a kid, especially local history. And I thought, that's absolutely what we need in Mobile, Alabama. We've got 300 plus years of history in Mobile. It's one of the oldest cities in the United States,
Yeah.
and fantastic food. There's a great food scene that's in downtown Mobile, and so I think just kind of capitalizing on that, and that's how the food tour got started in Mobile.
Was anybody else doing it? Like, it's not a new concept.
No, nobody in Mobile was doing it. It is
Oh, okay.
there. At the time, I think mainly you would find food tours in large cities around the country. In tourist places. Of course, New York has probably got 7 or 8 of them. New Orleans, which is about 2 hours from where I am, they probably again have 5 or 6 food tour operators. But no, nobody was doing this in Mobile, and so that was another big thing for me. It kept me up at night thinking about it. I was like, man, somebody's going to do this eventually, and I'm not going to be able to live with myself if that person's not me.
All right. So a little bit of a blue ocean here, where the concept had been proven out. It exists in other cities, but doesn't exist here yet. So hey, why not me? Why don't I go ahead and do this? And we took a food tour in New Orleans last summer, and it was a blast. Like, it was a great kind of group outing, aside from just like sitting in one spot, and you get to mingle during the walks and learn a little bit of the history. And it's a fun time. So it makes a lot of sense. And the interesting thing to me is, like, Mobile doesn't necessarily strike me as a huge tourist destination, but I guess you get some Gulf Coast visitors and seasonal traffic and maybe spring breakers and stuff. But it's not a New York or an LA or Chicago or something like that.
That's right. Most people do not. They don't. I mean, let's be honest. They're not planning their trip to Mobile like you would say New Orleans. But what we have kind of got a little bit of a Gulf Coast niche. We do find a lot of people that take Gulf Coast trips, and so they're doing New Orleans, coastal Mississippi, coastal Alabama, the Panhandle of Florida.
Yeah.
A lot of people are doing that Gulf Coast trip, and that's worked out really well for Mobile and for our tour especially. I mean, we've had people from all 50 states, maybe 20 countries or so. Like it is really incredible when you kind of step back and look that these are people that are coming to Mobile, and yeah, it's a hidden gem. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I would certainly compare Mobile's food scene with some of the larger cities that we compete with, like maybe Chattanooga or Asheville, North Carolina,
Yeah.
Savannah, Georgia. It's a good food scene.
Very good. Pump it up. You're gonna have to check me on this, because I'm betting by the end of the call I'm gonna pick up a little bit of your drawl. When I used to live in Atlanta, I'd come home to Seattle for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, and people be like, "Who are you? Where did you go? Who? Why do you have this Southern accent all of a sudden?" It's like, hey, I'm talking to Southerners all day long, all day, every day. It just starts
It
to rub
just
off.
happens. The y'all just comes out.
It just starts to flow. So we'll see at the end of the hour where I'm at with that. All right. So the idea, strike. Hey, this needs to exist. There's nobody else doing it here. What's the first step in getting it off the ground?
The first step of getting it off the ground, I think, of course, for any side hustle is the fact that you've got to, I'm going to do this, right? And,
Yeah.
and and not be denied that you're going to do this. But I think specifically for a food tour, it's pretty simple because as long as you've got a good website that functions well and a good booking platform for your customers to book your tour on, that's the hardest part. And of course, you've got to make relationships with restaurants. All that is very crucial. You've got to be a very good communicator, communicating with these restaurants, and restaurant owners do not like they don't like change. So if you're going to tell a restaurant that we're going to bring 12 or 14 people into your restaurant, they're going to freak out. So that's where that communication is very crucial. And for
I mean,
food
that seems
tours,
like a good thing. It seems like a win for the restaurant. Like, hey,
it
this
it,
is
it does.
hopefully incremental traffic, incremental business for you.
That's right. But I guess they go to the worst case scenario. You know, they're
Yeah.
restaurant people are going to be glass half empty kind of people most for the most part. So they're going to freak out a little bit. But that communication is where you're going to say, you know, no, we're going to come to your restaurant in the middle of the afternoon when you're not as busy. And we're going to be there for 20 minutes. You're going to know ahead of time how many people are going to be there. You know, we're going to have a dish prepared ahead of time. You're going to know the kitchen's going to be very well prepared. You're going to
Okay.
know if we have any food allergies or any aversions, and they're going to execute it. And we're going to come in, and what's going to end up happening is if they have a great experience, they're going to go back.
Okay. I want to get back to the restaurants in a second, but any tools or software or tech on that website booking side? Hey, we got to make it easy for people to book with us.
For our tour, I use a platform called Fair Harbor. I think it's a very common booking platform in the tour industry and in the food tour industry. They also they handle your ticketing, they handle your payments. All that's going to be in there. They take a small percentage, but usually about 2.5%, something like that, is what they're going to take. And they also take a little bit of fees when the customer books.
Sure, as far as payment processing and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
okay, got it. So now we have a little bit of a chicken versus the egg problem where we put the website up. We now have a system that will allow customers to book with us. But now, do you have to go to the restaurants first and kind of make these asks or promises like, hey, I can bring you 10, 15 incremental people. It's going to be in off hours. It's all going to be fine. But at the same time, you don't have those 10 or 15 people yet. And to be able to do it consistently, like what was that part of the equation?
That's the scariest part about it, I think, you know, for sure. You're making those promises, but at the end of the day, yeah, you don't know if those people are going to show up. So I think simple actions for me would be just getting involved in the community. You know, I think that would be the simple thing to do, is to, you know, go network and tell people about your idea. Yeah, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. If you're in a smaller market, they're, you know, if there's no other food tour in your town, they're going to think you're, you know, that you're crazy, but that's okay. And I think, you know, just blasting social media and for the food tour industry, we're fun, man. You know, we've got food and restaurants, and we've got stories to tell about our city that we're passionate about. That's a good recipe in my mind for travelers and tourism.
Yeah, for sure. And you can see that in the reputation that you've built in terms of the online reviews and the testimonials that you have from happy customers, because you know, it's a fun thing to do. And that's kind of how we look at travel in a lot of ways is, well, what are we going to do in between the next meal? Like, what's the next excuse to go explore a new part of town, a new restaurant? So it definitely
Everybody, when they're traveling, they're looking for the local spots, the local restaurants. That's what I love about a food tour as well, is it gives you an opportunity. You know, for our tour, you get to go to 5 restaurants in a 3-hour span that you may not otherwise get to go to while you're, you know, if you're only in Mobile for 36 hours or sometimes less than that. You take a food tour and you get a chance to really dive into the cuisine, and most food tours like ours, they're partnering with the best restaurants.
Yeah, tell me about the first restaurant or two to say yes to you. They were open to this concept.
I was scared to death and walked into a restaurant, had a meal, and enjoyed it. I knew the owner was working behind it was kind of an open kitchen, and you could see her working back there. And I did go, kind of a little tip, I'll say, I went during a non-peak time. So let's say like a Tuesday at 1:45 or 2 o'clock, you know, so when the restaurant is not that busy. And so I asked to speak to the owner, and I knew that she was very community minded. Like, you know, she had what was good for the community in mind. And so I thought that she was going to say yes. So I was like, okay, this is going to be my easy win to approach her. And so I did. I asked to speak to her after our meal was finished. And she came over, and I told her about the idea. And she was, I love it. Yes, we'll absolutely be a part of it. You know, and so that was my first win. And that gives you, it's good. It gives you that confidence to go to the next restaurant and tell them the idea that you have. And
yeah, now you can name drop, you know, the name of restaurant number one and be like, hey, they're already on board.
That was huge. That's a good point.
Okay.
So get those quick, easy wins, and yeah, and go to the next restaurant and say, yeah, we've got this popular restaurant down the street, this popular candy shop. That helps your credibility.
Okay. Yeah, and there's some level of understanding that, hey, this is a startup. If there aren't any bookings or nobody shows up for a few weeks, you totally understand, right? It's billed as all incremental for them. Like, hey, this is extra business, hopefully.
That's right. We that's how we worked out our pricing structure is on a per person basis. And so if we have 4 people come, we're going to pay the price that we negotiate based off those 4 people. Or if we have 14 people, we're going to pay based off the price of 14 people. And so I think that's a very viable business model too for food tours.
Got it. I was going to ask about that revenue share. So if you charge, I think one of the sites had like $100 per tour, per booking for this 3-hour 5 restaurant tour. How much of that goes to the restaurant? Like, other than that, it's just your time walking around and telling stories.
Yeah, that's right. And I try to keep our food cost, try to keep it in that 40% range. Where 40% of your ticket cost is your food cost or drink cost. And then you've got a little bit of overhead there. Hopefully maybe no more than 20% of your of company overhead. And so that's kind of the structure that I usually try to go by.
And other than that, it's all there's very little fixed costs. I mean, maybe pay up front for hosting and software, but other than that, it's like, okay, if we book 10 people, then we can pay out the restaurant based on that. But other than that, like, pretty low startup cost business, yeah?
Very much so. I think your website is going to be your biggest cost. If you've got somebody that can help you out with the website, that would be big. That's going to be your biggest cost though. And again, I think your hosting, your email platform. So just a little bit of technology there. Your email addresses, things like that. So it's a very low startup business. That was something that was very attractive to me working at the steel mill. I didn't have to go out and get a big loan to start this business. And so otherwise I might not have started the business if that was the case.
And it's important to know we're talking food tours, but you could fill in the blank with whatever kind of tour that you might be into. We've heard from guests on the show doing just historical walking tours. I feel like we've had, haunted tour, during Halloween, especially. Maybe it was Austin, where I did like a ghost tour or something. Like, I don't know. I was like, this is interesting for me. It's a chance to see parts of the city and learn some stories that I otherwise never would have known. We've had people do urban hiking tours. We've seen a meditation experience type of tour. We've done, a friend of mine was doing like gratitude hikes, like, unplugged, hey, leave your phone behind and we'll go out to the woods and think about gratitude and stuff. Any number of different niches where this kind of thing could work. But then the question is, well, how am I going to get customers for that? And so that's kind of where I want to go next is, okay, it's one thing to, have the restaurants lined up. It's another thing to have the website lined up, but it's not necessarily if I build it, they'll come type of thing. It's like, now I got to go out and market this. You remember where the first customers came from?
The first customers were from social media and particularly Facebook. We hit Facebook really hard. Again, we're tapping into, this is something that's bigger than our tour. This is for the city. We're doing this to promote our city, to grow the food scene in our town. And so we really hit Facebook hard. Our first couple of tours, it was my family and friends. There's no doubt about it.
Sure.
And they were kind of the ones, the guinea pigs, I guess. Kind of helping me work through the kinks of the tour. And but of course, that was a requirement for them was to share their experience on Facebook and on social media. And so one thing led to another, and the community really embraced our tour.
And this was primarily organic, or was this paid
this
Facebook
was
ads?
All organic.
Okay.
Very few paid Facebook ads. We did not see very much success from paid Facebook ads with targeting that. We found our results were better with organic content.
Okay, and this is going to local groups or pages and trying to get in with those admins, or this is just like on your personal profile, like, hey, I'm starting this thing, and then having your friends do the same after, hey, we just took this tour with Bienville Bites and it was awesome, that kind of thing?
It was primarily personal social media pages, and our friends and family who, man, they told everybody, and so yeah, the shares got out. I think we had a really good social media strategy too. Highlight our food, we highlight our restaurants, we highlight people on the tours, and when you do that, you're going to get some shares, and you're going to get some organic content that people are attracted to.
That's true. It's the old rule from what was that book, Made to Stick? Maybe names, names, names. It's this old small town newspaper, and that was the editor's rule: names, names, names. People love to see their names in print. If you
That's exactly
can,
right. Yeah, it's amazing when you put up a picture of a group. If they're in that picture, they're going to share that.
yeah. The same thing with the restaurants that are being featured. They probably have their own limited social media following where they're going to push that out on your behalf. That makes sense. All right, so the social media engine starts to spin, and this is primarily locals at this point. This is trying to get a critical mass. This is trying to get just a baseline of of feedback and testimonials and reviews to start to seed. Are we thinking TripAdvisor at this point? Are we thinking Yelp at this point? Are we thinking, how can we start to attract people outside of our immediate circle?
That's right. Yeah, the first few weeks, absolutely. I'd say the first 3 or 4 months, it was 90% of our people that were coming were locals. Mobile has a unique food scene because there's about 50 restaurants in the downtown area. A lot of people that live in the suburbs are not familiar with all those restaurants, and so it gave an opportunity for people who lived in the suburbs of Mobile to come downtown and visit and have their eyes open to these incredible restaurants that we had no idea they were all here. Or maybe some old favorites that they visited many years ago, and
Yeah.
so there was a little bit of a connection there. We really encourage people to leave reviews, and that was huge. Like again, not just sharing about it on social media and Facebook, but going on some of these platforms like you mentioned, TripAdvisor and Yelp and Google, and leaving 5-star reviews. And so we really push those out. People left the 5-star reviews. And so, yeah, you'll see after a few months of gaining some of those reviews, that bumps us up in the algorithm of places like websites like TripAdvisor,
Hmm.
and slowly you start to become one of the number one or one of the highly ranked things to do in your town,
Yeah,
and so that's
totally. I
where
think
it opens up, like you mentioned, all the tourists and visitors.
yeah, you're closing in on looks like 300 TripAdvisor reviews as of as of press time, as of the time of this recording, and it doesn't happen by accident, and it's just miles ahead of the next closest thing. So, do you remember if there was a specific ask or hey, scan this QR code at the end of the tour and it'll shoot you straight over there where you can say nice things about us?
I've tried a lot of those things. I've tried the QR codes, and I've tried even the paper, even business cards with a QR code.
Hmm.
I honestly, I have just found that if you just ask people to leave a 5-star review, most of the time they really will. And honestly, I think that that's been the best strategy. If you really connect with somebody on a personal level, and we get a chance to do that in a 3-hour tour, a walking tour,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
at the end of that, if you come away leaving them with an incredible impression of your city and your genuine knowledge and passion that you're showing, they'll go leave that 5-star review.
That's that Southern hospitality coming out. Well,
There you go.
I got to do right by this guy. He just spent 3 hours with me. The other component of this that I forgot to ask about is coming up with a 3 hour history lecture. And, walking, talking, this building, this restaurant, like this is significant. Like you mentioned being a history buff, but that's still like a lot of material. Maybe it's less difficult than it seems like it might be to come up with, but that seems like a non-zero part of the equation too.
No, yeah, it's huge. And you kind of, it can be a little tricky as well because you want to highlight some of the popular landmarks that are in your city. Well, you got to hope there's some restaurants near those landmarks as well, So that's a key component. But I've always been, I don't know, my brain is wired differently maybe, but I'm a big history buff, but I can figure out time very well too. So I don't know, I'm really good at logistics and knowing exactly when I can arrive at a certain place, how long it's going to take me there. I've slowly found over the years, not everybody's like that. But
Yeah, we're going to walk from here to here, and we're going to tell this story, and we're going to talk about this thing, and then by the time that's wrapping up, hey, and here's our next destination.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, we're looking for historic hotels, historic churches, historic parks, historic streets, anything with a story, anything with a good story about our city, and of course the restaurants themselves. They've all got stories. Whether it's the founder, maybe one of them has been featured on the Food Network or something like that. That's common. But
Okay.
then also I think people are just as interested in the mom and pop restaurants that have only been open for 2 years. They're interested in those stories as well. So every restaurant has a story.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And then it's like you got to study up on your history, really street by street, to learn what to talk about, what's going to be compelling. Does it?
I'll say another thing too, and it does sound intimidating, and I tell my tour guides this all the time. They are not going to remember what year the Battle House Hotel was built. They are going to remember how you made them feel. And so, kind of going back to what I mentioned earlier about when you really connect with people and just kind of connect with them on the tour on a one-on-one and personal level. They're going to remember that. That's going to be their takeaway. It's not going to be the history. It's going to be the food, but mostly it's going to be how you made them feel.
Yeah, there's that's kind of what stands out from the tours that I've been on, or the tour guides that we've had. It's like the level of excitement, and they could be talking about something that in a different context would be like, who cares? Like, why? Why does this even matter? But they're like so into it that you're like, well, now I'm into it. Now I'm invested in this, and it really does help.
Yeah, it
So
rubs off on you.
yeah, that's helpful to know. Okay, so the social media ball is rolling. Now we're starting to collect a critical mass of reviews here. We've got the spiel down. Does it get old? Telling the same jokes, telling the same stories, eating at the same restaurant. Like, imagine like I'm doing this every weekend, and I know this line is going to get a laugh, but it's like it is slowly killing me inside. Or it's like,
No, it really doesn't. No,
I'm getting paid to do it, so it's all good.
And the dynamics of the group are different every week, right? And I think that's what's kind of fun. It gives you a little bit of butterflies before the tour because you don't know what that group is going to be like. You don't know where they're going to be from. You don't know their story, right? But I think once you start kind of connecting and asking them where they're from, and hey, people love to talk about themselves, and so if we can start connecting with those people, they're going to open up a little bit, and they're going to build your knowledge and all that. It's going to build their trust with them. And so I think that makes the dynamic different every time. No tour is ever the same.
And no two days are alike. There was this Jimmy Buffett line. Somebody asked, "You ever get tired of singing Margaritaville for 40 years?" And he's like, "Honestly, no. This song has paid the rent for decades, so I'll never get tired of singing it."
Exactly right. That's right. Yeah, Mobile native Jimmy Buffett, by the way. There you go.
That's right, Gulf Coast. That's cool. Love it. Is there a minimum number of guests? This was, one of the, I guess the pros and cons. So one of the booking platforms that another guest mentioned is Airbnb Experiences, where somebody books an Airbnb in Mobile. That site is going to, try and get incremental revenue by recommending some of the things to do while you're in town. One of them is going to be Chris's food tour. But even if only one person books, at the time, anyways, if recollection serves, like the requirement was like, even if one person books, you got to go do the thing. It's like, so I got to go do my 3-hour spiel for one person.
Airbnb Experiences, they do have the, that requirement. For us on our website, I do have a 2-person minimum.
Okay.
So if you book on our website, we will do the tour for 2 people, and I've done plenty of tours for 2 people, especially in the middle of August. I can't figure out why nobody wants to do a 3-hour walking tour when it's 100 degrees outside. I still haven't figured that out. Our marketing strategies there may need some work, but no, I've given 2-person tours, and as long as you got I think that goes back to what we talked about with your structure of your pricing model. And so, no, I'm not making any money off a 2-person tour, but I'm also going to make sure I'm not losing any money off a 2-person tour as well.
Okay. Are you still doing the bulk of the tours yourself? You mentioned, hey, we've got some other tour guides here we're going to give the script to, and they can run with it.
I've slowly got a great team of tour guides. I don't give as many tours as I used to. In the early days, it was my wife and I giving tours. I was working at the steel mill, and if I was off on the weekends, I would give those tours. If I had to work the weekends, my wife would give the tours on those dates. slowly but surely, of course, we got burned out really quick. I've got small kids at home, and we've got a family as well, and other priorities too to tend to.
Yeah.
So we started hiring a couple of tour guides, and yeah, we gave them a script, told them to make it their own. You know, don't copy word for word. Put your personality into this script, and they've done that, and that's been a game changer for us. I've got about 6 tour guides that lead tours right now,
Wow.
and so they're as passionate as I am about our city. They're as knowledgeable, and again, I think the best thing about it is that they love people. They love connecting with people, and that's their greatest trait. And so I'll let them give as many tours as they want, and if there's a weekend that everybody happens to be off at the same time, then I'll go give it.
Okay. Yeah. So starting out, I mean, it seems like a great weekend side gig where it's like I can have that full time job because this is going to happen during off hours anyways. Because
It,
the people taking the tours are probably going to be off work too, and so it makes sense.
You can be as small of a food tour operator as you want, or you can be as large of a food tour operator as you want. Yeah, you could if you wanted to, you could do this on Saturdays only, or Fridays or whatever day you chose to do that. Or if your town has got the demand, you could do it every day of the week. It's one of those things that's what's really fun about this industry too.
Yeah, just block off the calendar availability. Like there's nothing going on a Wednesday afternoon, so
That's right.
you can't book that day.
Yep. And if you're going to be on vacation 2 years from now, then yeah, go ahead and block that off. But for
Was
us,
there?
like, we've got a great team of tour guides, and so there have been times where I get to go on vacation and let the tour guides, let them handle everything, and that's a great feeling.
Yeah, that's really cool to be able to remove yourself from the delivery logistics of it. And I feel like that is where it could wear on people. If I don't have enough margin built in to hire somebody else to do this, then I'm committed to spending every Saturday night going out and doing this thing. And it's like, and if you love it, that's one thing. But it's like, even if you do love it, it's nice to have the option to step away.
Absolutely. Yep.
Was there a revenue target or number of guests target where you felt comfortable calling it quits at the day job and said, look, this is going to be our full-time thing?
No, I don't think there was ever a number. I think if I had put a number on that, right, when you've got a family at home and you've got small kids like I do, um, there's never enough, and so that day would have never come. So no, I didn't have a revenue target that I was looking for. It was just I don't know. It was kind of just the timing was just it just worked out. My wife she got a job teaching elementary school, and so that kind of took care of some of our insurance and benefits that we needed for that.
Hmm.
And the timing was just right. I knew I kind of scaled the business as much as I possibly could. My At the last few months of my job at the steel mill, oh, I was a bad employee. They did not like me because I was always taking off. I was always in the break room on the phone, in the bathroom on the phone, right? Like I had scaled it to as much as I could without getting fired.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I believe in this business, and I believe that even as we sit here today, I believe that our business is going to continue to grow, and we're going to continue to connect people to Mobile, and we're going to grow Mobile through our food tour.
And it's exciting, and it's grown every year since that, starting as a side hustle into a full-time
It's grown
thing.
every year, and we hit of course, we got a COVID story just like everybody in 2020, knocked us down. But 2021, we were back, back with numbers that were greater than 2019, and those
Yeah.
have grown every single year. So, I'm so thrilled.
So a couple ways to expand. Number one is, getting in front of both more locals and more travelers, which it sounds like you're doing through these different tour booking platforms like TripAdvisor and these like, best things to do in Mobile type of lists. What else is going on the marketing side these days?
For, one of the things that we've kind of tapped into with our tour are themed tours. And you mentioned the haunted tours. We give a haunted tour as well in the month of October.
Okay.
That's something that we've really tapped into. It brings out some of the locals, and we so if you've taken our traditional history tour before, you might come out and take the haunted tour, and we have haunted cocktails or haunted themed food and drink during some of those tours where we will make a visit by the graveyard and telling some of the haunted stories of Mobile. And
Okay.
so that's something that we've kind of tapped into. We're going to do probably 9 or 10 themed food tours this year. One of those is a Jimmy Buffett themed,
Oh,
after
I got to come to
our
town.
native Mobilian. But
Yeah.
and Jimmy Buffett talks about food a lot in a lot of his songs. So we're gonna have a Jimmy Buffett themed tour where we talk about some of his stories that he has growing up here in Mobile, and also tying that into the food that he talks about in some of his songs. So we're going to have a cheeseburger in paradise.
Love it.
We're going to have oysters and beer, some frozen concoctions, and all the good stuff like that. So, um, but again, the theme tours are great. Christmas tours, those are Christmas themed. We have Mardi Gras in Mobile and Mardi Gras themed tours. So we've really tapped into that, and it's brought out locals. That's been the biggest thing that has distinguished us from, I think, a lot of other food tours, is the fact that we have 70% of our people are locals that come on our tour, and I think a big reason is because of the theme tours.
Now, you're also running the Port City Plate podcast. Do you consider that a marketing channel for the business, or is
That
this something fun to do?
It is. I did start that as a marketing channel for the food tours. Again, I've got these relationships with these restaurant owners and people in our city who have these stories that, yeah, we tell the story on our food tour, but we get to really go in depth on their story on the podcast. And I would highly recommend a podcast for a food tour operator because, no one is going to say no to being on your podcast, and you might have found that out, Nick. And that also helps with it helps build your credibility as well, and it gives you stories. Some of the interviews that I've given, I'll turn that around into the script of our tour, and I'm always learning things about that particular restaurant that I didn't know through the podcast, and so incorporating some of those stories back into the tour as well has been so beneficial. So now I can't say that it's I don't have a revenue number to give you. I can't say that podcast has given me X amount of revenue, but
Yeah.
it has absolutely been beneficial for me in the community and for our tour.
Right. Building relationships with restaurant owners, hard to imagine a downside to doing it other than just the time commitment.
That's right.
Okay. The other angle that another tour operator was using was kind of like for team building events, where it was like, instead of going for these onesie, twosie tourist, maybe it's a family and you get, 5 or 6 people come in at once, but it's still a lot of, individual sales. And sometimes they want to call you and ask questions. And it's like, she found it was somewhat easier to make big ticket, 50-person team building sales for some corporate office that happens to be in town and needs something to do. Like, do you play around with that at all?
Absolutely. A quarter of our business last year was strictly corporate and team building tours that we had given. And
Okay.
so we absolutely tap into that. If you're working in an office, you're looking for something different than just going out to a restaurant. And so the tour allows you to mingle with your group, go to different restaurants, do something different. I've also found that we've tapped into a company here called Airbus, and they build airplanes, around the world. They have a manufacturing plant in Mobile. And Airbus has used us a few times for when they bring corporate clients down from other parts of the world. They bring them here to Mobile, and they take our tour. And so it also gives it's another way for somebody else to promote Mobile. outside of just maybe the Chamber of Commerce saying how great the city is. You get to these people, these executives get to come and take the tour, and it shows how, hey, Mobile's a really cool place. We have a really cool history. We've got great restaurants, and it's a thriving town, and it makes them feel good about their decision to locate and do business in Mobile.
Do you do anything proactive to get on the radar of those, corporate booking travel coordinator type of people, or is it just by virtue of being number one for like things to do in Mobile that they reach out
It's
to
a
you?
lot of hard work. I would say the number one thing is going back to what I mentioned at the very beginning is going out and networking with people. I absolutely recommend that, and I think getting your name out there. But yeah, email, that's another big way that we kind of capitalize on that too.
Okay, email in terms of trying to find a decision maker, trying to find a contact person at these
That's right.
companies.
Yep. And so email marketing, and so yeah, we'll even send out sometimes specific emails to our list of clients or our email list who are potential team building tour guests, and so we'll send out a specific email to them specifically, telling them about the different options. So yeah, when it comes to team building, we've given tours on trolleys, and we can do as much or as little as you want to do on a team building tour.
Is the email list primarily just the existing customer base, or is there a reason somebody else would be on it?
Primarily, it's an existing customer base.
And I guess my guess is it's not huge, so you kind of scrub that list for people who have company looking email addresses. Be like, hey,
That's exactly right.
you look like you took our blah 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 tour last July. Hope you had a great time. Open the door in that way. Like, if you ever need a team building activity, keep us in mind.
Absolutely, they'll do that. A big thing that we, a good little strategy that I kind of came up with was I created a blog, and it was on our website, best team building activities in Mobile, Alabama, and it was it's like top 10 list, right?
Yeah.
And so if you search for team building in Mobile, that's the number one search. That's the number one thing that's going to pop up. So we've got that on there, and of course you click the link and sends you an email right to me, and we'll start planning that corporate tour.
Love it. Yeah. That's probably not a huge search volume, but very high, very well qualified traffic that does come through.
That's right.
Very good. So what's a day in the life look like for you today? Or maybe this weekend, for example, if you've got a dozen people booked, but you got somebody else handling that tour, you're answering the phone, you're doing the podcast. Like, where's your time going if you got other people doing the actual logistic tour side?
Yeah, I still consider myself a solopreneur, in a way, because I don't give as many tours. This weekend, for an example, we'll give probably 6 or 7 tours this weekend.
Wow.
But I'm not going to give any of them, and so that again, that going back to
How
some of
cool
that
is that?
communication.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's fun, Now it's of course you're still responsible at the end of the day, and emergencies happen, and so you've always got to be on standby a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think that communication with the restaurants, I'm in constant communication with the restaurants about our groups, and if something is a little bit off schedule from our normal tour, they're going to know about it ahead of time, and so I think communicating with the restaurants, communicating with the tour guides constantly, and getting good people that you trust, and yeah, I think that's a good recipe for me to be able to handle a lot of the logistics. I get to create these theme tours that I've talked about. Like right now, I'm working hard on our haunted tour season coming up in October,
Okay.
and so it gives me a chance to plan that. It gives me a chance to plan some of the team building tours that we'll do over the next few weeks as well. So
Were
a lot of
your
planning.
were your roster of guides pulled from existing tour operators? Like, were they doing this before, either for themselves or for another agency, another company, and they're just like, oh, I have capacity, I could add on another tour? Or these like completely homegrown hires where you're like, look, we'll teach you how to lead these food tours?
It's a incredible mix of people. So I do have one person that was a tour guide for a duck boat, that she did a duck boat tour. She was a tour guide for them. Other than that, nobody else had really ever given tours before. Now they were
Okay.
again, passionate about our city. One person is a retired school teacher. One person actually took our tour as a visitor, loved it so much she moved here and reached out to me about taking tours, and
Wow.
told me that the reason that she moved here was because of the tour. and
Wow.
and so now she's giving tours for us. And so it's an incredible
That
mix
must have
of
been sub
people.
tour. Yeah. Yeah. You never know where your next great hire is going to come from. That's fascinating. Anything else that's surprised you along the way?
I never set out to quit my full time job. That I certainly didn't anticipate that. That was never my plan. It was just really just again, like I mentioned at the beginning, a passion, just to talk about our history and to give those tours. So no, I never would have imagined starting a podcast or quitting my full time job. I even wrote a book. I wrote a book called "The Culinary History of Mobile" that had never been
Wow.
written before, and so just little things like that that have opened up so many doors and avenues. Um, it is surprising when you stop and think about it.
That's fascinating. We'll have to link up the book in the show notes here.
Absolutely.
Where do you want to take this thing? Is there a geographic expansion play? Like, oh, we're going to take over the whole Gulf Coast? Is there? I mean, there's a limit to how many people are coming through town, and I guess you got a decent chunk of the customer base that's locals, but then I got to imagine that taps out after a while. Like, what's next for you?
Yeah, I did. We did expand to a neighboring city that's called Fairhope, Alabama. It's a very small town. It's a lot of boutique shops and great restaurants there. And we did expand there, and that tour is going really well too, and it's growing. But my plan is not to. I don't plan on having an empire of food tours along the Gulf Coast myself.
Gonna
I'm passionate
franchise this
about.
thing? World domination? Yeah.
No, I'm passionate about where I'm from. I'm passionate about Mobile and Baldwin County, the area that I'm from, and so that's where my passion is. So it would probably be I'd be doing those towns an injustice to really expand and do that in some other town. Now I have, but what's next for me though is I have started a course, and it's called Food Tour Founders. And so I want to give people who are interested in this niche an opportunity to take my course and learn the lessons and perfect the entire strategy of your business, and for people to do this in their food tour. And I hope that, I think of course, my big goal would be to have not an empire, but thousands of food tours around the world, potentially, of people that have taken the Food Tour Founders course. And that would be, you know, incredibly fulfilling for me.
You can impact a lot of lives that way, both in the tour operators and then the people going on those tours, wherever they travel. Because it's such a memorable experience. The one that stands out to me is, riding on the back of these motorbikes in Vietnam, and it just feels like you're going to die because there's just wall to wall motorbikes in these packed cities. And then, eventually the traffic lets up they feel like you're really flooring it, or, and open it up and you look over the girl's shoulder and you see we're going like 25 miles an hour. Like, oh God, feels like we were flying now. But it was such a unique thing, and still talking about it 10, 12 years later. So
That's right. Yeah, and there's a great network of people. They take food tours everywhere they go, and
yeah.
so that's another, I think, a marketing win for a food tour operator. That is, organically, you're going to have people that are searching for food tours because there are a lot of great food tours out there, and it makes an impact on you. It makes it's there's so many great operators that give great experiences that people can trust that, hey, you know what, a food tour is a great experience in a city because you're going to eat at some of the great restaurants, you're going to learn about the unique food, and the food that ties into the history.
Well, it's something that we like to give as gifts too, where it's like, I don't know what to get you, but I know you're going to this place this week, and here's a gift certificate to this place, or here we already booked it for you on Thursday night. Have a good time.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I don't know. Do you get gift traffic or gift card
Absolutely.
traffic?
Yeah, we do. We do. We have gift cards on our website, and so yeah, we have people that that does happen pretty frequently, where maybe a relative, might book a tour or give someone a gift card for them to come to Mobile or something like that. So that does happen pretty frequently.
Very good. Well, foodtourfounders.com. This is brand new. So you'd be a chance to be an early student of Chris's if you go check that out. Foodtourfounders.com. We'll link that up in the show notes. Bienville Bites Food Tour.com as well. If you happen to be in or around Mobile, check them out. Go take one of their tours. Let's wrap this thing up with your number one tip for Side Hustle Nation.
My number one tip for Side Hustle Nation is simple, and it's probably been said before. Just do it. Just step out there and do it. It's scary. It's scary to think about the what ifs, especially when it comes to business. But hey, I think for anybody, if you've got a passion, especially for food, for tourism, I say just do it.
Just do it. Very good. Again, foodtourfounders.com. You can find Chris over there. A couple takeaways before we wrap up. Number one is really this call to be a steward of the community, right? It's the relationships with the restaurant owners. It is leading with this, hey, we're fans of Mobile. We want to get the word out. This is a great place to eat, a great place to learn about the history, and be, that excitement wears off, or that excitement rubs off, rather. And it's not, we're approaching this as like, money hungry startup entrepreneurs. That will come, and that is great. That's a byproduct of doing the first part of trying to build a product that people really want and value, which I know you've done in this case. The second thing is to build that marketing engine where now 7 years deep into it, it looks like you can't search for things to do in Mobile and not come across Chris. But it didn't start out that way. It started with, hey, friends and family, social media, organic. Can you leave us a 5-star review, right? And it starts to compound and it starts to compound. And then we get the corporate booking tours. And then we start the podcast. And, integrate. And then we expand all these different other, themed tours. And then we're expanding to the nearby city. And it's, it seems like a lot starting out, but it was just a weekend side hustle starting out, right? It just, I want to kind of hammer that in, that the marketing engine doesn't have to be overnight, but it can really start to compound as you get into it. So fascinating stuff. I'm looking around to see if there are any food tours nearby. We're out in the burbs, so probably less good around here, but definitely lots of opportunities to do something in and around Seattle, especially seasonal with the cruise traffic coming through. So makes a lot of sense. If you are looking for something to listen to next in this local tour niche, I've got some other episode recommendations for you. Episode 370, we talked to Rob Patingolo. He did a history tour, walking tour in Washington, D.C., and what was unique about his business was YouTube was the primary marketing strategy. And what was interesting about YouTube is global. It was I'm marketing a local business on this global platform. Well, how it worked in his case was he was targeting common questions that up and coming visitors to DC were going to ask, like, how does the metro work? Or, what are the best things to do in the summer in these? And so he'd create these videos. Hey, I'm Rob. I'm a local tour guide in Washington, D.C. And here's how to use the metro. Here's how our metro system works. And again, super targeted audience. And he'd get customers booking all the time. I watched half a dozen of your videos and it's so cool to meet you in person. And it's so cool to book one of your tours. We talked to Michelle Maddox. She was the one doing the guided meditation on the Red Rocks in Sedona. That was primarily through Airbnb experiences. Again, tapping into these, pre-existing marketing channels. We called it the buy buttons theory. Like, hey, where are my target customers already doing business? If they're coming into town, they might be doing it through Airbnb. And maybe there's a strategic partnership through local hotels or, making connections with the concierge desks at various hotels in this case. And the other one that comes to mind, the Michelle Maddox episode was number 347. And then we had Alex Kennan in 193, way back in the archive. She was doing the urban hiking tours in San Francisco. Lots of bookings through those, corporate team building stuff. Plus, through building up that reputation over years of putting in the reps and getting those TripAdvisor reviews and showing up as a cool thing to do in town. And she ended up getting a book deal with, Mountaineers Press or Mountaineers Publishing, the urban. She literally wrote the book on the urban hiking, just like you wrote the culinary history of Mobile. And if none of those appeal to you, That's all good. Hustle.show is where you can find a little 2-minute quiz to get your own personalized playlist of the episodes that are most impactful for you. You can do it on your mobile device, just a few short multiple choice questions, and it'll spit out that playlist for you. Hustle.show is where you'll find that. Big thanks to Chris for sharing his insight. Thanks to our sponsors for helping make this content free for everyone. As always, you can hit up sidehustlenation.com/deals for all the latest offers from our advertisers in one place. That is it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're finding value in the show, the greatest compliment is to share it with a friend. So fire off that text message, hey, we should totally start this in our town. Until next time, let's go out there and make something happen. And I'll catch you in the next edition of The Side Hustle Show. Hustle on.